Are we seeing the death of millionaire status? Better, how much do you really need to be considered rich?
Brian, I am excited about this show because I feel like this is a question that we often see permeated throughout our comments. People ask us all the time, hey, is $1 million enough? Or people don't even ask us the question anymore. They tell us, guys, $1 million is not enough. And so we want to speak to that. How much is it to actually be rich today? And realistically, what's it take to get there? How do you do it?
Yeah, now first, look, I'm the optimist here. So I always think $1 million is a lot of money. But we should definitely address the fact that $1 million is not what it was in 1996. And why do I choose the year 1996? There's a reason it's on set. The Millionaire Next Door changed my life. And that was one of those things that kind of was like, man, I want to be aspirational to hit this goal. But we have this thing called inflation that has changed things a little bit.
It's wild. If you think about $1 million then, if we inflate that out from 1996 all the way out to 2023, $1 million back then is worth almost $2 million today.
Deuces.
So the thing that you were aspiring to then now has doubled. And so obviously that's something when we think about the goals that we set and what we are striving towards, we really need to take that into account. So that's one of the reasons why $1 million by itself may not be enough money, but that's not the only reason why that might not be enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, because I've been in the game long enough that it was not uncommon back with all the people who were writing books that were in the financial space. They were talking about like the wealthy barber, 10% savings. If you think about Dave Ramsey, he's talking about 15%. Yep. There's a reason that all the content back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, could talk about 10 and 15% is because you had pensions. You had a much more stable Social Security. Those things helped out. But unfortunately, Bo, we've seen pensions are going away.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at the total number of retirement plans in existence between defined contribution, those are plans where you as a participant put money into them, or defined benefit where the actual benefit for you is defined. They've crisscrossed. So back in 1975, there were only about 8,500 defined contribution plans. Fast forward to 2020, and it's almost 87,000 of those plans, and we're just looking at big plans with more than 100 participants. But when you look at the number of pensions, in 1975, there were 20,000 pensions of that size. That number has now decreased to only 7,000. So what that's suggesting is that the onus for retirement is now on us as savers to contribute to that future retirement, not just bank on our employer providing some benefit for us when we leave the workforce.
Well, if you think about it, in the past, it was employers would kind of take care of you after you gave them decades of your service. If that's kind of going away, how about the social safety net? We hear Social Security, it was kind of implemented to be that backstop. Unfortunately, we all know it. It's just kind of unspoken. But if you actually survey the general public, 71% of Americans believe that their Social Security will run out within their lifetime.
And if you actually look at the mathematics right now, the latest projections actually suggest that Social Security realistically could run out of money by 2035 if no changes are made. And so we don't know what those changes are made, but what we do know is that it is uncertain right now. This thing that you could have banked on that could have replaced a large percentage of your working income might not be the same way. So again, this is just one more example of where the onus is now on you, the saver, the worker, the accumulator, the investor, to be saving for your future because no one else is going to be doing it for you.
Well, this is when I love that we're nerdy, Bo. I mean, let's just get down to the point here. We showed you, because we had already done this exercise, we said, man, with inflation kind of popping off like it's been doing, $1 million is now, in 1996, is the equivalent of $2 million. And then I saw an article that confirmed our researches. There was an article that came out that from Charles Schwab that was saying that they went and surveyed across America to ask Americans, what do you consider to be rich and wealthy? And the average, now obviously some of these coastal cities it was more, but if you took the average for the United States, the answer was $2.2 million.
Which is wild, right? So I think when Dr. Stanley wrote the Millionaire Next Door, the answer probably would have been $1 million. Hey, what does it take to be wealthy? What is the wealth number, $1 million? Now, we were in pre-show prep, Brian, and you said a great thing. You said, hey, but geography matters. When it comes to rich, like you might be rich in a small suburb in Georgia, but not rich in a major city. And what I think is great about this Schwab article that came out is they actually looked at a number of different geographies to arrive at that 2.2 million. So if you're in Seattle, the rich number was 3.1 million. If you were in DC, it's 3 million. Atlanta, 2.3 million. Well, when they looked at all the different cities they polled, 2.2 was the average. So that is kind of now considered to be the new norm of what wealth is, or what people consider to be wealthy or rich.
But and look, the numbers show that it indeed is a pretty plush life. If you think about what can $2 to $2.2 million do for you in retirement, we use like safe withdrawal rates. If you take into account safe withdrawal rates, the Trinity study and all the other research out there, 4% is a pretty solid thing. So if you think about 2 to 2.2 million, 4%, that's about $88,000 a year.
And that's only part of the story. So if you have a portfolio with $2.2 million that can generate $88,000 per year for you, and then you think about the average Social Security benefit of about $40,000 a month, $40,000 a year, that brings your total income in retirement to about $130,000 a year if you're someone who's worked for an entire career life cycle and you saved up $2.2 million. $130,000 a year is a fantastic living.
Well, I think if you think about it from terms of month-to-month living, assuming you're because we want you to be debt-free in retirement, you don't have to save for retirement anymore, which for a lot of you out there, that's close to a quarter of your income is always going towards savings and investments. You don't have to do that anymore. Now you get to basically consume over $10,000 a month. That's a pretty plush lifestyle, and a lot of you guys are thinking, and that's why we did want to give some context. Let's ground this number. If it's close to $130,000 a year, what is actually the median household income? Bo, it's around $71,000.
So that means it's like 180% of the median. And now remember, the question for Americans that was asked by Schwab was not, hey, how much do you need to retire? How much is an appropriate retirement portfolio? It's how much is rich? How much is wealthy? So in some of the stuff we're going to share, we're going to use that 2.2 million as our baseline. But remember, that level of wealth today will generate a standard of living that is 180% the standard of living of the median household in America. So this is living pretty large. This is a really good retirement living.
Yeah, and that's why I love, let's kind of jump through each decade. And the first one we wanted to kind of start with is the 20s, because the 20s gets me so excited because pretty much every little bit you give, it only takes a little bit of today to get a really incredible, great, big, beautiful tomorrow. That's what I love about it. You might not feel like you have a lot of money laying around, but that's okay because time is going to do the heavy lifting for you. But here's what we found. If you wanted to, and we have a great resource for you, if you'll go to moneyguy.com/resources, we have a wealth multiplier for young savers that will show you what you need to save per month to reach $1 million and $2 million. I think that's important. Look, we're about to show you on the plush side of life what you need to be saving to keep up with inflation. But for anybody who's starting out, you can get to $2 million of assets. For a 20-year-old, you only need to save $191 a month. For a 25-year-old, $368 a month. For a 29-year-old, $600 a month. Those are still very doable goals, and $2 million is a lot of money, but we did want to go, just like in a Money Guy fashion, the extra step and say, yes, but with inflation, what do you need to do to keep that purchasing power?
That's exactly right, Brian, because a 20-year-old after listening is saying, okay, $2.2 million today provides a rich, a wealthy, a very nice lifestyle, but I understand the time value of money. In the future, $2 million might not be enough for me to do that. So we wanted to figure out how much would you need to save so that when you got to retirement, when you got to age 65, the portfolio you built would provide the same purchasing power as $2.2 million today. And this is what we found. For a 20-year-old, to save to age 65, to have the same purchasing power as $2.2 million today, you need to be saving about $800 a month. For a 25-year-old, that'd be about $1,300 a month. And for a 29-year-old, it's a little over $1,900 a month. Now, here are the assumptions we use. We assumed a 20-year-old can earn on average 10% per year. And then every year, we decrease it by 0.1. So at 21, it's 9.9, and then 9.8, 9.7. And then we just assumed a 3% annual inflation rate to bring the dollars back to present value. So if your goal, if you're 20 years, okay, 2.2 is rich, I want that. When I get to retirement, when I get to 65, what do I need to be saving to be able to maintain that purchasing power? These are your numbers.
Yeah, and like I said, as a refresher, 183% of what the typical median household. So this is a pretty, if you're talking about fat living in retirement, this is pretty good. Definitely financial mutant territory. And just to ground the number, I like people because we're math nerds. We love it too. You know, for a 25-year-old, if you want to know what the equivalent of $2.2 million will be at retirement, it's actually a little over $7 million. So these are not small sums of money, but I think it's to be intellectually clear and transparent. This is the way it works if you want to keep up with inflation.
And so the question you're probably asking, I'm 20, and Brian, I think you even said this too. This is hard. In your 20s, it's hard to save at these levels, and we recognize that. And so the question you ask is, okay, well, how do I do it? What are some things I can think about? What are some ways I can attack this? Well, the very first one, especially if you're early on in your wealth building journey, is don't miss the easy opportunities. Don't miss the things that are the duh moments that you should be taking advantage of. One of the ones that we always like to talk about, Brian, that we get so excited about is getting the employer match.
Yeah, because this is one of those things where small decisions today can have huge, big results down the road. And that free money, because it's really a doubling of your money. Whether your employer, if they offer you 50 cents on the dollar for your contributions, that's at least a guaranteed 50% rate of return. But a lot of employers, on some portion of your compensation, it's going to be dollar for dollar, and that's 100% guaranteed rate of return. Don't miss out on that incredible opportunity, because unfortunately, there is about 34% of the public that is not maximizing that free money opportunity.
34% of the public does not like free money. 34% of the public is squandering the opportunity. So if you are someone in that situation right now and you have an employer match at work and you're not fully capitalizing on getting the whole thing, I would try to do every single thing in your power to be able to do that so that you can capitalize that. The other thing that you have to do, and maybe this is the way that you find your ability to go get that free money, is you have to look for the easy ways to find money. You have to figure out, okay, are there things going on, or are there things in my life that I could adjust in terms of the accounts that I hold or the money that I spend that might create some dollars from it? We actually have a show out called 3 Easy Ways to Find Money, coming out on July 14th, that you should be able to go listen to and say, okay, I can find, maybe I'm only able to save $100, $200, $300, but man, if I can find a few extra dollars and I can start saving that at 20, 25, 29, those dollars will add up substantially over my working career.
I do. Before we close out the 20s, I do want to talk to my aspirational 20-somethings, because you find this content, you're excited about starting to build for tomorrow. Don't let these numbers overwhelm you in the beginning, because I got to tell you, I think for in your 20s, if you can just do anything, I don't care if it's $50 a month, if it's $100 a month, just let your money start working for you. Start building that army of dollars, because I think you'll find you just start the process, but then you'll start hitting your stride in your career. Yep. You'll get pay raises. You'll have other things that come. So just be aspirational. Try to get to the 20-25% by the close of the decade so that you can go ahead and have your financial journey set and you can actually start building upon itself.
But okay, Brian, what if I'm in my 30s? What if I'm just now hearing this for the first time? Maybe I didn't know about personal finance. I didn't find the Money Guy show until I got into my 30s. We have a great deliverable for you called the Wealth Multiplier for Young Savers. You can go download it, moneyguy.com/resources, and this will show you how much you need to save on a monthly basis to get to $1 million and to get to $2 million. Because right now we're talking about $2 million is a lot of money. It's the rich number today. So if you just set that as your number, okay, well, what do I need to be saving just to get to the $2 million threshold, this free deliverable will give it to you.
Yeah, and just to kind of give you a flavor for what this is, for a 30-year-old, it's going to be around $680 a month. For a 35-year-old, it's $1,200 a month to get to $2 million. And for a 39-year-old, it's right over $1,800 a month. Go to moneyguy.com/resources. Just like Bo said, you can figure out what the simple goal is to start building those multi-million-dollar status. But Bo, we once again wanted to go above and beyond so we could actually talk about what is inflation. If you want to keep your purchasing power in check, what's required to do that for all of our financial mutants?
If I'm 30 years old and I'm just starting out and I say, man, at retirement, I want to be able to spend the equivalent of $2.2 million today, and I've not done any saving up to this point, in order to do that, I've got to save a little over $2,100 a month. If I wait until 35 to get started, I have to save a little over $3,200 a month. If I wait till 39 to get started, I need to be saving almost $4,500 a month if my finish line is age 65 and my goal is to have a standard of living 180% the median average American household income right now. So it is a lofty, lofty goal, but even someone in the 30s, these numbers are hard. But frankly, being a multimillionaire is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, you need to have a big shovel for a lot of these goals. And that's why I think it is important. But we know that there's a whole community out there. I mean, I'm always amazed because we put the savings goal at 20 to 25% of your gross income. But a lot of you will share that you're saving 35, 40%. Some of you even saving 50% of your income. So I know that there are folks out there, but I don't want anybody to feel like we are closing the door on opportunity.
No.
And that's why I love the moneyguy.com/resources. You know, if you get to $1 million, and there was even, we did a TikTok where I said, hey, if you can just get to the first $1 million, I think you'll be surprised how fast the second $1 million will fall. And at the time I said 4 million, but now look, I was talking about somebody who has a big shovel still contributing, but I think you will find, just if you understand the rules of doubling and how, you know, like rules 72 and other things, you're going to see typically with good market performance, and we've been in a bad market for 2022 was not a great market. You might find that 1 million turns into 2 million, 2 million turns into 4 million, and we're talking about 5, 6, 7 years. You got this multiplying, and then it exponentially is growing on itself. You can do this.
And what's great is, and you just said this, Brian, the bigger the pot gets, the faster the pot grows. That's the way that it works. So if you can figure out early on how to get those dollars working for you, you're likely going to be setting yourself up for success. So you're probably sitting there in your 30s thinking, okay, well, how do I do this? If my number is I got to save somewhere between $2,000 to $4,000 a month, that's a big nut. What are some things I can be thinking of? The first one that we see, avoid lifestyle creep. Yeah. It's really easy in your 30s when you're in the messy middle to think about, man, okay, I want the nicer car and I want to do the home improvement and I want to move to the nicer house and I want to take the nicer vacations. And if you're saving the way that you're supposed to, those things are not inherently bad. But if you're doing those things and allowing your lifestyle to expand, but your savings is not also expanding, I worry that you're missing the plot and you're kind of robbing from your future self.
Yeah, this is all about discipline, and that transitions right into discipline is needed not only to avoid lifestyle creep, but make sure that lifestyle creep doesn't seep into big financial purchases of your 30s. I'm talking about vehicles. I'm talking about housing. It is one of those things I found even in my own life. You are in the messy middle, meaning you start having children, you start having those decisions like buying homes. But there's also, it almost feels like you go back in time to high school a little bit because you moved into a neighborhood. You've got, the Joneses that live down the street. Don't get caught up in this comparison life, because I think that even in social media and all the other things, walk to your own drumbeat, understand your why and what you're actually building for so you can have success no matter where you are by decading your journey.
And I would encourage you, if you want to know how to make those decisions well, how to make the vehicles decision, how to make the housing decision, we have tons of free deliverables available at moneyguy.com/resources to help you navigate how do I approach those decisions? What are the ways that I attack making the big decisions and making them well? The other thing that we see people do in their 30s, Brian, that I think you have to be so careful of is don't let temporary problems lead to permanent solutions that create permanent problems. This is what we mean. Maybe you're being pulled in 1,000 different directions in the messy middle and money gets tight. You think, man, you know what? I maybe I should pull some money out of my 401k, or maybe I should just stop saving. Maybe I should, and not recognizing that those decisions, what seemed like they might help in the short term, really can have very long-term detrimental consequences to your wealth building.
Yeah, I think that it's all very valuable stuff. And that also creates a good transition into the 40-somethings. Here's what's interesting about 40-somethings. You've been around for a while now. You've had at least 20 years out there in the marketplace and trying to figure out what your journey looks like. So this is when you can start kind of taking inventory. I invite you, if you're not doing net worth statements and other things, to kind of check where you are, because I think there are some of you who are going to be watching this and you're going to be brand new to the wealth building journey in your 40s. Still go out to moneyguy.com/resources to see what you need to be saving to get to $1 million and even a $2 million. But this is the point where you probably need to start taking a measurement of how well have I done in the last 20 years of building my army of dollars. So go to learn.moneyguy.com if you're looking for a net worth tool. But Bo, walk through, what does this look like? Because they probably are going to want to start looking at taking inventory of what they have in savings and comparing that to what's required to have $2.2 million.
Yeah, remember, the whole premise here is that we've established that today $2.2 million is what's considered wealthy. So if you're someone in your 40s and you're thinking, man, when I get to retirement, when I retire at age 65, I want to live the equivalent lifestyle of someone who has $2.2 million today. We want to solve that equation for you to tell you what you should do or where you should be in two forms. The first is, okay, if I'm starting from zero and I'm 40 years old and I want to save the equivalent of $2.2 million by 65, I got to be saving almost $5,000 a month, almost a little over $4,800 a month, which is hard. However, if you have been saving, if you have been building through your 20s and through your 30s, and by age 40, you've already accumulated $627,000, you have already accumulated a lump sum large enough that without any additional savings, it should continue to be able to grow by the time you get to retirement to provide that lifestyle. So if you're somewhere in the middle, maybe you're saying, man, I don't know if I'm not quite saving $5,000 a month, but I am saving something, but I don't quite have the $630,000 lump sum just yet. I would encourage you, go check out our Know Your Number course, because what you can do is you can actually see, based on where I am today and based on what my number is, am I ahead of the curve? Am I behind the curve? Or have I not even defined what the curve is yet? And in your 40s is when you probably ought to start be thinking through that and start having those discussions.
Yeah, I think when I saw this, when we did this in show prep, I'm a numbers person, so I look for patterns. And it's just one of those things, when I see something that lines up with what I have researched, what I've learned, and they align, I'm like, man, let me make sure that I put an asterisk, that I point that out. And I want to kind of look at that row that has age 49. And we talk about, if you want to have the purchasing power of what's the equivalent today is $2.2 million, which is what Charles Schwab did the survey and found out that is what is to be considered rich according to their survey. A person right now who's 49 would need to have $1.1 million kind of saved up.
Assuming no additional savings.
Assuming no additional savings. Well, guess what that ties in nicely with? Ramsey Solutions, and they talk about this quite frequently. They did some research, one of the largest studies ever of millionaires. And here's two data points that I found quite interesting, is that the typical millionaire, it's not get rich quick. They usually have saved and they've been patient and diligent with their discipline for 28 years. And they cross through the threshold of 7-figure millionaire status at age 49.
Yep.
How cool is it that this confirms by what Charles Schwab, the 2.2, and then we mathematically calculate what would you need to have, and it lines up very nicely with that same 7-figure $1 million. That's kind of cool. That's kind of like a full circle thing that puts the bow on top of everything.
And so what do you do in your 40s? What's the thing that you ought to be thinking about? How do I finish the race? Because for most folks in their 40s, we've done something. We've started doing something, and we kind of know where we're going, but we're neither at the beginning of the race or at the end of the race. We're right there in the middle. So what's the best thing you can do? Number one, keep chopping. And what we mean when we say keep chopping is keep putting the work in. Keep putting the work in. If you've been saving, keep saving. Don't allow yourself to get drawn off course. If you've not been saving, start taking it seriously. Start saying, man, I need to make decisions today that are going to impact myself 10, 20, 30 years in the future. And I need to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Because even in your 40s, you still have a lot of time for money to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
And I don't mind giving a bow echo here, is that because you've already kind of said this. If you are going to even have the option of slowing down on your savings and investments in your 40s, you ought to go at least measure where you are in the process. That's why if you go to learn.moneyguy.com, we do have our Know Your Number course, because I completely agree. You should keep chopping, but it makes sense at this stage because you're getting close enough to your end goals of where you want to hit financial independence. You ought to really take a measurement of exactly where you are so you can pinpoint to kind of see if that does change your behavior and your saving and investment habits.
I love it. Another thing that you really ought to think about in your 40s is, how do I avoid some of the big wealth killers? How do I avoid the things that really can be detrimental to long-term wealth building? And the first one, it's called this reason for a reason, is the midlife crisis. It's this idea of, holy cow, who am I? What do I value? What is my purpose? And you have this existential problem, and you are going in one direction, and you immediately shift the other way. If you can begin to answer those questions and define those before you reach the crisis moment, you're likely going to set yourself up to be able to navigate going through that stage of life well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind being the wisdom of, because I've lived through this part, is I think there is a weird transition that occurs. 20s and 30s, you're in this, especially for all of you mutants. You're achievers, you're out there, you're attacking, and you're trying to conquer a lot of life goals, as well as hit some key indicators probably in your career. And then you get in your 40s and your mortality kind of just shows up right in front of your face. Yeah. You become real. If you're not focusing on your health, you notice you don't heal as fast. You notice you put on a few pounds a little easier. So this stuff starts playing crazy tricks with your brain. And a lot of people will unfortunately say, you know what, I don't like where I'm at, or I'll start questioning some of the decisions of the past, and they'll do what's called the midlife crisis. Now, for me, at the time, it was buying a red car. That's as bad as it was for me. But for other people, they really will shake things up. And unfortunately, a lot of them lead to like divorce and other big decisions. And the reason we talk about divorce is so scary is because we know in the 4 years that lead up to the relationship kind of having issues, spouses fighting with each other, punishing each other financially by buying stuff that's not appropriate, that it's typical that those divorcing over that 4-year period, they will see a drop of 77% of their wealth. That's catastrophic.
It's literally catastrophic. It's something that's so difficult to bounce back from. So if you can even do a relationship inventory, think about the things in your life and begin assessing that early on, hopefully you can avoid some of these wealth killers. Another wealth killer, I mean, these are kind of on the negative side. Another negative one is greed. How many times do we see someone in their 40s who's doing great? They've been following the financial order of operations, they've been making the steps, then they finally hit a level of success where they have a little bit of extra discretionary capital, maybe they have some dollars invested, and they say, you know what? Now I need to get into private equity. I need to go use leverage to really amplify this. And they end up getting out ahead of their skis, or they get tied up in some sort of dumb doctor deal, some sort of venture. They don't really know what they're doing. And they find, holy cow, in a very short time period, I just evaporated all kinds of wealth that I spent the last 20 to 30 years building.
And look, don't mishear us. We're not against everything, because I know we have great friends out there that'll tell us how much money they made in real estate syndicates and other things. We're not against it all. It's just our thing is that if you have used like traditional index funds and other things where you, instead of trying to beat the market, you just rode this ever-expanding economy and market that we live in, instead of staying with what brought you to your level of success, you don't have to turn over everything. And I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people, when they reach a level of success, they say, well, now I have crossed into a new threshold. I need to hit that sexy sizzle of what other rich people do. And there are entire marketplaces that will take advantage of that, where they say, hey, they will package themselves up and be all glossy. They'll be shiny. They'll even put gold foil on it to tell you that their system is better because this is what rich people do. just be careful. Tread cautiously. Make sure if you don't understand something, that doesn't mean it's better. It might mean you need to either do more research or even stay away from it because, like I said, there are plenty of people trying to spin your heads just to sell a different, more expensive, more profitable product than maybe what brought you to the dance in the first place.
And look, here's the deal, and Brian, I'm sure there's nothing wrong with being a boring rich person. Being a boring rich person is kind of fantastic. So like you said, don't fall into the trap of assuming I have to do something different to end up in a different place because likely the things you have been doing are the exact things that you should keep doing to keep moving you in the right direction.
Bo, now this one, fortunately, let's talk about the 50s. 50s, because you are getting closer to the 65-year-old, inflation's going to have an impact, but it's not going to be a punch in the gut like it was for the 20 and 30-somethings. Let's talk about if we know that $2.2 million is now what Charles Schwab said. We've done our own study that Millionaire Next Door, $1 million probably requires $2 million to have the same as purchasing power as 1996. What does this mean for our 50-somethings?
Yeah, if you're at 50 and you've not started saving at all, then I would argue, probably $2.2 million might not be the goal you need to be aspiring to in terms of today's dollars. You might need to rethink, what does a revised new type of retirement look like? Maybe Social Security and those other types of things are a larger portion of your retirement income. But if you are someone who's been saving and you are someone who's aspiring, okay, I want the equivalent purchasing power of $2.2 million today, well, by age 50, if you have saved $1.2 million, it's likely you've saved enough to where you don't have to save anything else between 50 and 65 to hit that number. By 55, if you have $1.5 million, $1.54 million, you'll have likely enough to get to the 2.2 purchasing power equivalent. And then by age 59, if you've accumulated over $1.8 million, even without factoring in additional savings and continuing on the behavior that got you there, you likely have a lump sum large enough that if invested well, would produce a lifestyle equivalent to $2.2 million in today's dollars when you get to age 65.
So now these are bigger numbers.
Sure.
So I'm sitting here looking at this. I'm saying a 55-year-old who has a $1.5 million, is that going to be enough to where they pretty much they don't have to put another dollar in? And I'm sitting there, maybe. I mean, that's the issue, is that you are now the CEO of a 7-figure enterprise, and you've only done this once. I will tell you, you don't know what your blind spots are. You don't know the complications that are now coming at you from a tax standpoint, from an asset allocation, from a tax location standpoint. There's a lot of things that are kind of starting to ring bells in your head on wondering, am I doing this right? That's why, fortunately, I will tell you there is a better way to do money. And we talk about the abundance cycle. We give away so much free information because I want everyone to show up here and for free. This is why the Money Guy, the classroom, the digital classroom that you're sitting in was started. I want you to come learn. I want you to apply these concepts. I'm asking absolutely nothing of you. Apply these concepts to start building success. But there will come a point that if you apply everything we share, you will reach a level of abundance, success that gets to the point that just like, man, I have reached that level of complication that I would love to have a co-pilot. I am the CEO of this 7-figure enterprise. I'd sure like to have a CFO because I know you guys have had hundreds, if not quickly approaching 1,000 retirements. How do I kind of leverage that knowledge to make sure I'm not falling into some type of trap?
If that sounds like you, we would encourage you, go out to moneyguy.com, click on the work with us, go out to aboundwealth.com, click on the work with us. We'd love the opportunity to capitalize on, to cash in on the abundance cycle, because we'd love the chance to help you navigate your journey. Because I think what's interesting about this show, Brian, is we talked about $2.2 million. That's what America right now says is wealthy. But that may not be your number. You may not need 2.2. Your number may be 1.2 million, and you may be 42 years old and well on your way to that number without having to change a whole lot, without having to redefine the way that you're looking at your finances. But wouldn't it be nice to know that? I love these shows where we can do these like deep dives into the numbers, but we have to remember personal finance is very personal.
Yeah,
right?
It definitely is.
2.2 million is a great number, but it's sort of arbitrary. It was kind of pulled out of a poll from a number of respondents. It's not necessarily what your number is. And so I'd encourage you, if you don't know your number, go check out our course, learn.moneyguy.com, so that you can start knowing what's the finish line that I'm working towards and what are the decisions that make the most sense for where I am right now in my financial journey.
Guys, we have a blast creating this content, helping you become the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. We're helping you own your finances because we don't want them to own you because you're not paying enough attention. Money Guy team, out.